Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to the last session of the day. Been a long day of awesome presentations, but appreciate you all coming. Today, I'm going to be talking about monetizing Splunk apps on our ecosystem. So for those of you who do not know me, hi, my name is Ellie. I am one of the product managers on the app platform team. I've been at Splunk for just about almost 2 years now, and I'm currently responsible for Splunkbase and App Inspect. Okay, so to kind of, I guess, level set a little bit at the beginning of this presentation, if you did not already know before joining this session, we have a very strong community of developers today that have built businesses entirely off of monetizing their Splunk apps. These kind of paid premium solutions, paid premium apps that we like to call them, that I'm talking about tend to be a little bit more of those end-to-end solutions that out of the box are going to kind of solve a key customer problem. So kind of from now and through this presentation, when I talk about these monetized apps, I'm generally not talking about a TA or a visualization that you might find on Splunkbase. We're more looking at these kind of premium turnkey solutions that a customer might be willing to pay for. So if you go to Splunkbase right now, you'll find that our estimates are about 52 companies that currently have a monetized, premium Splunk app that they are selling to customers listed on our platform. All of this so far has happened organically. These developers that some of you might even be here today, these developers saw an opportunity and figured out on their own how to do this, how to build their business, how to acquire customers, all of that, and have been successful with it. So I spent some time interviewing several of these developers, and today I'm going to kind of share with you all a little bit about what I learned from these developers, what works, what doesn't work, what some of the key pain points are, what are some things you might, want to be aware of if you are thinking about monetizing a Splunk app. Of course, I'm not the expert on this. Developers that have done this are, but I'm looking forward to sharing a little bit what I learned through talking with these developers. So whether you, have an app on Splunkbase already and you've never thought about charging for it, or you're already monetizing and, wondering how others might be doing it, hopefully this session's for you and you'll learn something through it. Okay, so how I'm going to be breaking down this presentation, I'm kind of going to be going into top, I guess, 6, I've broken it down into 6 insights that I kind of learned from my research with our community. I'm going to walk through each of these. They'll each have a slide. And then at the end, I'm going to introduce a new guide documentation page that we have just put out as like our guide to monetizing apps, where a lot of this information will be held for the future. So kind of, I guess, briefly going through what these will look like. First insight, most monetized apps started as a personal project and solution. So kind of the general journey that a lot of these developers have gone on and how they, grew to their business. Number 2, we'll talk about license enforcement. One of the key, first technical hurdle you might come across and you'll need to figure out as a developer looking to monetize your app. On the flip side of that, we'll talk about, the licensing model. So what is generally considered like the dominant licensing model that a lot of these developers are doing and why that might be. Then number 4, number 5 are kind of a little bit more on the customer-facing side of things, I suppose. We'll talk about number 4, enterprise trust earned through professionalism, not just product quality. Number 5, talking a little bit more about actually acquiring customers. Splunkbase is a starting point, but not your full go-to-market motion. And then finally, number 6, app lifecycle management is kind of an underestimated business risk that a lot of these developers called out. So I'm pretty sure I went through that super fast and may not have made any sense, but luckily we have we'll go into these topics a little bit more further throughout. Okay, so starting with the first insight, I guess, because I think it's probably the most important and honestly maybe might be one of the most encouraging ones for anyone in this room who has an app on Splunkbase and you maybe haven't thought about charging for it. This is something that I think almost every person that I talked to, every story had in common is that these developers were not trying to build a business when they first started. They were just trying to fix a problem that they had. So, for example, one developer built their app because they were frustrated at a previous job, wanted to make their own life easier, and over time realized that a lot of other people were falling into the same problem and were willing to pay for it. Another grew out of an open source project they had and reached thousands of downloads, thousands of users before they even conceptualized the idea of formalizing a company. So all that to say, the pattern was pretty consistent. These developers found a genuine gap in the ecosystem. They solved it for themselves and then let the community validate it through natural adoption to then get to paying customers and a full business today. So, what that could look like, maybe your first version of your app is free on Splunkbase and then the business come later, sometimes, 2 or 3 years later. Key point, none of these developers put their app out there day one with a pricing page. They, built something real and then the revenue followed later. And now you'll find that many Splunk customers, including some of our largest customers, now adopt these, premium paid solutions that you'll find on Splunkbase. Okay, moving on, insight number 2, license enforcement. So this was honestly one of the most consistent pain points, I guess, that I came across with every interview. Licensing is a big thing. It is, the first thing that everyone has to figure out when you're thinking about selling your Splunk app. And it's not always the easiest. The challenge is right now, there's no, overall Splunk platform level mechanism to enforce license entitlements for third-party apps. Instead, we kind of leave this up to the developer to establish what works best for your app. What this ultimately means is that every developer you'll meet who's charging for their app had to build their own licensing system, and each developer kind of does it their own way depending on, what their app is. I've put some examples, I guess, on this slide. So one developer has used like third-party services, JSON files, or API brokers to validate their licenses. One really cool example that I found was a developer who had, they were doing a token system and then like embedded Stripe directly into their app to have customers pay for it, which was really cool. But generally, there's a lot of flexibility for you as a developer into how you want to accomplish licensing, and how you want to do that will be very unique to the type of app you're building. But it is something to keep in mind, I guess. So the technical implementation is also only half the problem. The other half is enforcement. One developer that I talked to described this as a concern that the way that they had set it up, if a customer doesn't pay, there's no way for them to turn it off unless they're in their systems doing service work. So once they have it, there's no way for them to stop using it. And that's, a real business risk and something that why a licensing system is such an important hurdle to think about. But on the enforcement side, what happens when that license runs out? Something that was pretty common that I found was what developers doing something, I guess I termed soft enforcement. Basically meaning like when the license runs out, you can, block the UI, redirect to a license expiry screen as kind of the forcing hand for the customer to renew. But it's really important, like a lot of these apps, especially if, customers are willing to pay for them, it means that they're probably pretty critical to, their normal functioning. So you probably don't want to completely cut off the app's functioning if the license runs out. Customers generally will work with a lapsed license, but if you completely disrupt their workflows, they probably won't be too happy moving forward. Okay, next slide. Hopefully I'm not talking too fast. Okay, that last slide, I talked a little bit about, licensing and enforcement. Now I'm going to talk about the licensing model. So how you think about, I guess, packaging your app and that side of things. What model that I'd say developers have generally landed on across the board was like a freemium model, I guess is the best way to say it, with a free trial at least to give the customer initially. The logic is, I guess, pretty simple. Like enterprise customers, especially large organizations, are going to have someone asking, why can't we just build this ourselves? Why do we need to buy your app? Everyone can build Splunk apps, right? But you need to, one thing that's important is you need to get into the customer's environment before that conversation happens. So a free or community tier of your app does that. It removes the procurement hurdle, gets it installed into the customer's environment, and lets the product do the selling on why the app is actually so important that they need to buy it. One of the developers I talked to put it really well. They said, quote, Splunk apps are almost implicitly a freemium play because there's always someone saying, why can't we just onboard the data ourselves and build some dashboards? So, you give them something for free and you make it very obvious what they're missing, which is why freemium works really well. So I guess common things I found that lives behind that paid tier, obviously it depends on what the app does, but connection limits, support, specific dashboards, functionality, etc. And then, of course, free trials are super essential. Everyone, said pretty much the same thing, that customers aren't going to approve a purchase without spending hands-on time with the product against their own data. So free trials, super important. And then I guess kind of a side note that I tossed on this slide, the kind of pricing side, packaging side of things, you'll find that perpetual licenses, not really super common at all. Developers generally are using, annual subscription, similarly to how Splunk is sold. And pricing for these apps tend to be linked to, customers' deployment size with some type of t-shirt sizing. It's pretty common. Not every developer I talked to did that, but I'd say probably majority did. Okay, moving on. What are we on, number 4? So enterprise trust is earned through professionalism. This was something, again, that came up in almost every conversation, was the concept of like enterprise trust. Splunk customers, they're large Fortune 100 companies, government agencies, and maybe as an individual, small company selling your app, the first question that these companies might be asking is not, does it work? It's, can we trust you? So I think that quote on this slide pretty much sums it up. Customers are willing to pay, but you just have to make it look like you're a real company. So I guess before your app even gets into the hands of a customer or they're thinking about buying it, someone in that company is going to look up your company. They're going to look at your website. They're going to look for documentation. They're going to ask what happens when something breaks. What are we going to do? Is there support? So I guess, what does looking like a real company mean? I've summarized it pretty generally on this slide into 3 things, but key things being a website, obviously, professional website, looks legit, documentation, clear, well-maintained docs on your app, more than, beyond what you can put in the description of a Splunkbase listing, most likely. And, again, this is not because a company is going to read every single page of your documentation, but more so because the existence of good docs says something about how you operate as a business. And then, of course, support, very important for these customers, a defined model, clear support terms, SLAs, Likely, if a customer is willing to pay for your app, it's because it's a critical use case, right? And if there's a bug or something breaks, they want to know that they will be covered. Um, so I guess case in point, it's not about having this, I guess, point of this slide is not that it's important to, not about having a huge team to convey that professionalism. It's more just about being super intentional about it as a company and as you're beginning to sell your Splunk app early on. Okay. Now, this one is, I guess, more so on the customer acquisition side of things. So how you actually acquire customers for your Splunk app. So, of course, Splunkbase is super valuable. I'm sure you all know what Splunkbase is. It's valuable to get your app in front of customers, in front of the right audience. Customers are already used to looking for their apps on Splunkbase, so it gives you that first point in discovery. If any of you have been sticking around through Dev Days today from the first session, you'll remember that Dan mentioned some stats on Splunkbase and how Splunkbase receives about 15K monthly active users, and then on top of that, 150K app listing page views per month. So there's definitely order of magnitude of customers looking for their apps and continuously browsing for new apps to help solve their problems on Splunkbase to fit their use cases. But of course, Splunkbase is not the end of the deal. As one of the developers I talked to noted, I put the quote there, Splunkbase is important. It's the link between you and your customer, but it's not enough. Obviously, these developers who have built real businesses treat Splunkbase is kind of that top of funnel touch point, not their full sales engine. They've built their own processes around them, in different ways to attract customers. There's a lot of different avenues to go through doing that. Some of these developers have been highlighted in our developer spotlight series. They've given talks at .conf, had booths at .conf, but participated in tech talks, or are just generally a part of the Splunk community and engage through blogs and Slack channels and all of that, and kind of leverage their professional network to reach customers. But of course, many ways to do that. But yeah, case in point, Splunkbase as a starting point, but not the full end of the deal. Okay, last insight. This one is something that came up a couple times, so I thought it was worth mentioning, but probably you already know this as a developer, is that app lifecycle management, I don't know if that's the best way to phrase it, but is an underestimated business risk. So on one hand, the Splunk platform changes a lot. We are constantly releasing new releases with new features, which is great. But what that means is that as a developer, you kind of have to keep on top of that and understand what's changing, what you have to do to fix your app. App Inspect helps with that. It can give you a heads up when new standards are put out and your app might lose cloud compatibility, but not everything and every customer problem and support case will likely be caught by that. And so, not every break surface is that way. And the customer, so what that means then is that customers will come to you with support cases, something's not working right with their app. And that might be because the platform changed and they're on a older version of their app and they haven't updated to the new one, or so on. So, on one end of that is customers generally sometimes are pretty hesitant to upgrade their apps, or the customer doesn't know that there's a new version available despite several touch points we have to tell them that. But even if they do know, upgrading a production app carries some risk that customers don't want to take on. So sometimes you'll end up with a long tail of installs on older versions. And as the developer, you end up absorbing some support cases for things that might be fixed in a newer version that the customer, might not be super willing to take on. But yeah, just kind of a side note, something that I heard from some developers. Okay, I'm going to stop blabbing now because I've been talking for a lot. So kind of to wrap that up, everything that I just talked about and more, we have kind of turned into a guide. We've never had something like this on Dev Portal. We've never had any documentation that references monetizing apps or put that out there, but we have just started this with a new guide. We launched it yesterday, so it is new and on Dev Portal. It's our first version of a guide to kind of put some, structure around how you might go about monetizing your app, setting up transactions, publishing on Splunkbase, and so on. It is our first version, like I mentioned, in our beta. So we are really looking for feedback and looking for you all to kind of read it, digest it, and we're looking to make this a living document that we want to be useful to our community. So we welcome any feedback in that area. You can, if you find it, you can find me on Slack user groups. I am looking forward to getting feedback from you all on this. So yeah, that is everything that I have to talk about today. Yeah.
So awesome. Thank you, Ali. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat. We are here to answer them. Thank you, Patrick, for adding the link to the doc.
Oh, thank you, Patrick.
Okay, if not, I can close us out. Thank you everyone for being here. It's been a long day. Oh, how should we send feedback through? You can reach out to Ellie directly on Slack. Ellie, that's okay,
yes,
right?
I am on the Slack user groups. You can find my name there. Feel free to reach out. Looking forward to it.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, everyone. Again, we covered a lot of ground today, and I'll be sharing all the recordings, the slide decks, and all the questions that went unanswered with their answers on Slack, on the UG platform, and videos will also be posted on YouTube. Definitely reach out to me or any of the speakers if you have any questions. We can get connected on the external Slack space. Thank you to all our speakers. We're very happy that you were here sharing all the latest and greatest from platform today with all our developers. Thank you to Viviana and Arif for bearing with all the difficulties technically in the background and hosting this event today. Quick reminder, remember to sign up for the hackathon. It's at splunk.devpost.com. Remember to sign up for the dashboard contest. It's up on the community. And we will see you all at .conf. Thank you.